Hey guys, Kenny17 here. Today I have a pretty exciting Acolyte of Chayula build that I wanted to share. Long story short, we built heavily into Chaos, no crit, then try to take advantage of some of the lineage support gems that lets Chaos contribute to freeze, as well as ignite. For shocks, we try to use other sources. Lastly, we try to stack all 3 different elemental ailments onto the boss for endgame damage scaling. One quick disclaimer is that this build is not cheap, because of the uniques required as well as the lineage support gems that I just mentioned. Overall, I did want to look into this, firstly for funsies, but second, pretty curious on how far I can take this currently lackluster Ascendancy into the endgame at its current state in 0.4. And I'm happy to report that I'm pleasantly surprised. So I hope you're also enjoying the montage running in the background for now, and we'll get into the build overview later in the video. Cheers! Alright guys, welcome back. I hope everyone has enjoyed the montage, and let's just jump right into the build. First thing first, let's start with the character sheet. This is a monk class with the Acolyte of Chayula Ascendancy, and all the footage that you've seen is me running at level 94. I have 25 strength, 150 dex, 150 intel. The dex and the intel here is the bare minimum in terms of the skill gem and the equipment requirements, so definitely get more if you can. I have 1400 life, 6k ES or 5900, 750 mana, no armor, about 1200k evasion with Wind Dancer up, and 15% block. So you can see this is really a hybrid ES EV setup with a bit of a block coming from the quarterstaff itself. I have all my LE resist maxed out, as well as close to maxed chaos resist at 72%. I think the rest of the stat sheet here is pretty standard fare, so I'll skip the rest of it here. So with the stat sheet out of the way, I do want to quickly note that for this video, the formatting is going to be similar to my previous video, where instead of going through the laundry list of skill gems, equipment, and passive, I'm going to have all of that detail linked in the Mobalytics, and I will keep it updated. For the video itself, I'm going to focus on more specific topics that really defines the uniqueness of this build. So with that out of the way, the first thing I want to talk about is chaos damage. How are we getting chaos damage in this build? As maybe most of the folks already know, it is very hard to get chaos damage on your weapon base. There is like 1 or 2 weapon base, there's on the bow, none on the staff. So the way that we get chaos damage is by leveraging this unique ring here called Original Sin. This is a must-have for the build. The key affix you're looking at here is 100% of LE damage converted to chaos damage. So the way that POE2 does damage calculation and conversion is pretty complicated. I will link a POE2 YouTuber who does a very great in-depth explanation of it in the description. But for this video, long story short, the way that damage calculation and conversion works is that you start with your weapon, and by the way, this is roughly, right, some of the details might vary, but you start with your weapon. All of your Fizz damage and LE damage you see here, local modifiers, gets taken, and then it's multiplied by, for every different skill gem you'll see here, attack damage or attack speed, right, 290%, or snipe here for 38%. This modifier gets directly multiplied to whatever number that you have on your weapon. And that value is what we call the base damage. After that, the base damage then goes through all the different damage conversion process that you might see, either on the skill gem itself like this, convert 80% Fizz damage to cold, or things on the unique like this. So what that means is that all of the Fizz and the LE damage that you get from the quarterstaff and the skill gems then gets converted into chaos. And that's the sequence. After the conversion, all the increase, decrease, more or less modifier gets applied afterwards. So what that means when you're making this build and you are going through the route of LE damage conversion to chaos, like what I'm doing here, what that means is that when you're going in the passive tree, do not take any of the node that says increase elemental damage, because when, in the damage calculation step in which increase and decrease is being applied, at that point you don't have any LE damage because those have already been converted to chaos. So the way for you to scale damage is to take increased chaos damage. That's that. One other quick thing I want to say is that there are also nodes like this. Gain 11% of damage as extra chaos damage. This gain step is also done around the same step as the conversion process and before the increase, decrease, more or less modifier. Right. So this 11% and whatever other gain extra that's additive is applied to the base damage, which again is defined as the weapon damage applied to the skill gem number. So I just wanted to quickly kind of walk through again the sequence of when damage conversion happens, as well as when most of the damage modifier calculation happens, so that you're not really allocating the wrong thing on the tree to make this build shine, essentially. And lastly, one comment on buying weapons on the market or crafting your own. With everything being said and LE to chaos, you really want a weapon that obviously has good overall DPS, but you want to make sure that most of that DPS is coming from the LE component. Doesn't really matter, fire, cold, or lightning, doesn't matter which one. But you want most of that coming from LE, not Fizz. And just for the simple reason that all of the LE damage on your weapon is what's being converted into chaos, not the physical part of it. So with all that being said, I did also want to note an alternative way to build for chaos damage. Instead of Original Sin and a weapon with a bunch of LE damage, both of these are actually pretty expensive. What you can do instead is you can opt in for a Ming's Heart. This one, instead of conversion, just straight up gives you extra damage as chaos. And just brief note, again, the step in which you get this gain is after the base damage is calculated, right? You just, whatever, it doesn't matter if you have LE damage or Fizz damage from the weapon and the skill gem modifier, whatever, all those different in the different buckets, all of those gets added up, apply a 48%, and you get chaos damage out of that. And then you go into like the chaos increase, decrease, more or less, whatnot. You can go this way. And at that point, I would recommend then you really just look for a weapon with high Fizz DPS rather than high, LE DPS, for the sole reason that it's a lot cheaper. You can do this check yourself, but if you can try to find a weapon with 600 Fizz DPS that's quarterstaff versus a weapon that's 600 LE DPS on the quarterstaff, and you'll notice that the Fizz one is a lot cheaper. So that combined with Ming's Heart is also a viable way, but again, it's a lot cheaper. For those on a budget, essentially. So now we'll get into the Ascendancy, as well as talking about the offense and defensive aspects of this build. Like what we talked about in the character sheet section, we are running Acolyte of Chayula as the Ascendancy for Monk. We are specifically taking Sap of Nightmare. This is extremely powerful for recovery that we'll get into when we get to defense, as well as Void Illusion. Even though this Void Illusion, essentially what this does is when you do a dodge roll, you leave a copy behind at 1 life, and if the enemy pops it, it does a lot of damage. The damage is good enough for clearing, not good enough for boss, but this is actually really good for recovery combined with Sap of Nightmare. And again, we'll get into the details in the defensive section of this build. On the offensive side, we are taking Waking Dream as well as Choice of Power. This essentially just kind of leaves, you know, these purple flames that you see on the screen, and when I pick it up after a delay because of my support gem, you gain extra damage as chaos. So with full stack, let's see. Yeah, I'm close to, you know, 120k, 118k damage for Ice Strike for clearing, which is pretty good. You will notice that we are building, you know, chaos into elemental ailments. Why are we not taking Inner Turmoil, and why are we not taking Unraveling? I'll talk about it in the miscellaneous section right before the conclusion of this video, but long story short, these two are way too unreliable. The you know, the variation in the power is even higher than like lightning based damage, going from 1 to like a super high cap. Like the way that they designed this needs to be reworked. This is not reliable enough for you to take advantage, and it's much easier to take advantage of lineage support gems instead, which then takes me into mapping. For mapping, we've talked about before, you know, we'll try to get some extra damage from Into the Breach from the Ascendancy, but mostly we're using Ice Strike. You'll notice that because we're using Original Sin, and you know, this conversion right here, 80% of fizz damage to cold, we actually have mostly chaos damage, right, combined with these two. You'll see the tooltip, like a little bit of fire, a little bit of cold, just from like Heart of the Well or things like that, a little bit of fizz. Given that, if I don't have Toll Stillness, this build, this skill does not build up freeze, right? So that's what I mentioned in the intro. Toll Stillness is essentially the support gem that lets us chaos damage from hits with supported skill contribute to freeze buildup. This is actually what lets us freeze. So at this point you might be thinking, isn't that just freeze with extra steps? Right, instead of me just running an LD build with like Ice Strike? Answer is yes and no. This gives us obviously some more flexibility because we're building the chaos instead of freeze, instead of cold. And secondly, we don't have to build into ice penetration, cold penetration, cold exposure, or even LE weakness for curse. None of that we need to do, just because it's all in the form of chaos damage, right? Second thing here, freeze. We are running this mostly to just help freeze the boss faster. You'll notice that we are also using this in the bossing section just to get him to be frozen more quickly. Close combat, crescendo. Real quick, crescendo, at the third hit of each one of your Ice Strike, you end up with 2 after images, and those 2 after images will perform the same hit, which allow you to spread out your damage across a wider range of area. So it lets you clear the map faster. And rapid attack. This set Ice Strike is very flexible in the sense that because we're running Toll Stillness, if you prefer Tempest Flurry or even Whirling Assault more, you can do that, and you can still use those skills to freeze, because both of those skills will have LE conversion, and you will be dealing chaos damage, which allows this to build a freeze. I prefer Ice Strike, personal preference, because you have a short dash that lets you get to the enemy faster. That's all. In a pinch, you will notice in the Delirium or Simulacrum run that I posted, if you encounter something that's a bit tankier or like a tanky rare, you can use Gathering Storm. This is kind of your mini nuke in the mapping scenario, and it lets you get out of trouble, right? When you're in trouble, when you're crowded, you can do a roll, which leaves Void Illusion, which is still pretty good at clearing, or you can, you know, if you have a few seconds on your hand before they crowd you, just do like a perfectly executed Gathering Storm. So the perfectly executed part obviously requires some practice, but this is kind of your get out of free card. And in general, you can get up to, you know, close to 1 million damage if you combine it with Mantra of Destruction, right? Gathering Storm, I'm running Culmination 2. This gives you up to, I think, 60% more damage modifier, which is really good. or actually 40%, right? 40%. 20 combo, each combo 2%, so 40%, still pretty good. Window of Opportunity 2. Momentum, so gives you a bit more distance for dash for more damage. Ambrosia and Zoph's Pyre. Effectively, Gathering Storm now actually can put on 2 different elemental debuffs on your enemy. One is Ignite, because again, this is a pretty chunky hit, and everything contributes to Ignite. And the second thing is Gathering Storm, when you do it in the perfect timing, you will leave Shock Ground. So when the enemy's standing on it, it's also shocked. So that's what I mean in the beginning when I talk about we will get shock from other sources. Gathering Storm is one such source. So you will notice, again, sometime in the bossing I will also use this, not as much for damage, but just to put Ignite as well as shock on the boss. When combined with Freeze, you have all 3 different elemental ailments stacked up. And when we talk about the bossing side of this build, you'll see that 3 stacks of elemental ailment does increase our damage further. Lastly, from the mapping side, we are running Herald of Ice for support. We're freezing things, so we're shattering them. Again, because most of the damage is chaos, we are not using the armor explosion tech that people generally uses. We're using Withering Touch and Chaos Attunement instead. We're using Withering Presence, better against bosses because they stay in your presence for longer. Chaos Mastery, Precision for a bit more accuracy. As well as Wind Dancer. This is more, run-of-the-mill, Magnified Area, Blind, and Maim for, just overall, better defense. Because you are running a EV-ES hybrid build. Lastly, on the mapping side of the thing, we are running weapon sets. So weapon set 1 is mapping, so we're using Quarterstaff, as you probably already noticed. And when I get to the passives, I'm not building to crit just because frankly speaking, everyone and their grandmother is doing crit. I'm kind of sick of seeing the same goddamn passive tree, for all the monk builds. So I wanted to try something different. So what you're seeing here is mostly, we take almost every single chaos cluster on the tree, with the exception of there's a cluster up here that gives you, chaos skills, but it's a little bit too far. But every single other cluster, this Bedification, this is a big one, some chaos damage here, and this we're taking. The Wither Away we're not, just because, I already have Withering Presence. If I have a few more points, maybe I'll consider this. And for weapon set 1 specifically, we are also building into Freeze buildup for obviously, more Freeze buildup. Even though I'm running Toll Stillness, the Freeze buildup still applies. A little bit more attack speed here. Subterfuge Mask, really important. As well as this semi-cluster of Quarterstaff here that lets you, do a lot more with Freeze, as well as a bit more defense, which is always nice. For bossing, we are relying on the key skill here, Snipe. Snipe, similar to Gathering Storm, has a perfectly timed version. Additionally, if you apply this perfectly timed version on the frozen enemy, you get even more bonus damage. So that's why there's 3 types here. There's the regular version, there's a perfectly timed version, and there's the perfectly timed version on a frozen enemy. In terms of the support gems that we use, we are using Window of Opportunity 2, Concentrated Area, Close Combat, Rage Forge, and Elemental Armament 3. This one lets you get up to 36% more damage if you have all 3 different elemental ailments stacked up on the enemy, and you should only be doing this while the enemy is frozen. So that actually leaves 2 other ailments, right? Ignite and Shock. So before we apply Snipe, question is, how do we apply the other 2 ailments onto the boss? We kind of already talked about one of the answers before, which is Gathering Storm. We generally use this in the mapping scenario, but in the bossing scenario, you are also more than welcome to use this, not for damage. It will do just enough damage that most of the time Ignite is guaranteed because you have Zoph's Pyre, right? And by the way, this leaves Shocked Ground also. So technically, Gathering Storm will both shock and ignite your boss, but there's a more efficient way to apply shock. So you get your Ignite from Gathering Storm, and you get your shock from Hand of Chayula. Hand of Chayula lets you socket in a curse and a mark and apply them at the same time to your boss. So for the curse, I'm doing Despair, pretty straightforward, less chaos resistance. Heightened curse, And then we're doing Freezing Mark here. Freezing Mark, as soon as you apply the mark, lets the boss take more increased freeze buildup, which lets you freeze them faster. Also, when the boss hits 70% freeze buildup, any other freeze buildup that's applied, freeze them instantly. So it's a lot quicker to freeze them as well. And as soon as the boss is frozen, mind you, not when the mark is applied on the boss, you have to wait until the boss is frozen. That's when the mark is considered quote unquote activated. And that's when charge mark kicks in, where it also leaves a shock ground. And that's, you know, probably a more efficient way of doing shock, because you're always going to be applying Hand of Chayula onto the boss. After shock is triggered, this specific shock from the shock ground gets also modified by overcharge, which just means that anyone standing on that shock ground specifically will take 30% more damage rather than 20% more because of this 50% increase in magnitude. You also have shock reflected back to you, but at that time the boss is frozen. So just be a little bit more careful, but generally you're okay. You're relatively safe. So in a nutshell, that's how you actually get shock from Hand of Chayula, ignite from Gathering Storm, and freeze from Ice Strike before you do snipe, right? For maximum amount of damage. After the boss is frozen, you have about 4 seconds. So before you do the snipe, you want to kick in 2 more buffs on your attack. You want to kick in Mantra of Destruction. This just needs a combo to use, which you're doing Ice Strike, so you will have a combo. As soon as you trigger this, your next attack does 69% more damage as Chaos, which is great. As well as Barrage. Barrage essentially lets you repeat any projectile skills that's barrageable, and that is Snipe. A Snipe is a projectile skill that is barrageable. So for Barrage, by default, the attack repeat plus 2 times, and further +1 for every Frenzy Charge consumed. I do not have any way to generate Frenzy Charge for now, but I'm sure if you really like to, you can probably take the keystone here. Where is it? Resonance, and find some way to generate Power Charge as a monk, which is not that difficult. So with that being said, you barrage, you Hand of Chayula, and then you fire off Snipe. One other thing I want to quickly mention is that I included in the video a Xesht T3 where I missed the snipe. So it takes some time getting used to because you're trying to aim a projectile instead of just doing like, you know, Gathering Storm where your whole body is just going forward. You'll notice that when you have multiple projectiles coming out of snipe, if I put my cursor closer, it forks earlier. You see that? But if I put my cursor further away, it stays together more. So, you know, while you're aiming, not only do you have to make sure that you hit your target, try to put your cursor, you know, on the other side of the screen so that both arrows are kind of merged together more, right, for snipe. 2 other quick thing, I'm getting 2 arrows per shot because of my Gemini bow, which has the implicit plus 50% surpassing chance to fire an additional arrow. The other 50% I'm getting from weapon set 2 of the passive tree. Weapon set 2 again is where we what we do for our bossing. We spec out of some of the defense because, you know, we don't need it while the boss is frozen, and we spec into surpassing chance here, as well as coming all the way down here and taking feather fletching, which, you know, allows you to do projectile speed, also apply as damage. And you take projectile speed and projectile damage and movement speed here. There might be some more efficient way to spec into weapon set 2, especially this cluster with the projectile speed. Maybe you can spec into quiver effectiveness, because I have a bunch of flat damage on the quiver. You know, I'll open that to folks here for discussion. So this is definitely, you know, not the most optimized. There's probably some better way to do it.
So with the offense out of the way, we can quickly talk about defense. And as we discussed in the character sheet, the defense is pretty straightforward. It's just a hybrid of energy shield and evasion. Again, we have around 5900 energy shield and 54% evasion, or more specifically about 11k evasion rating. How do I stack up this much? It's, you know, just taking the relevant nodes on the passive tree. We're taking this entire cluster of EVES. We are also taking this Spectral Ward, right, for EVES hybrid. We are taking, let's see, this Quasi cluster right here, Illuminated Crown, Heavy Buffer. We're taking an ES only helmet, if you can see. and that is because we are running Subterfuge Mask as well. So this also helps, and we're taking these 2 nodes for a little bit more of ailment and stun threshold. We are also taking this quasi cluster here of ES, and as well as this cluster here for ES. All of this means that I can get a little bit more ES without having to path all the way up here for Enhanced Barrier, without having to pass up here for Patient Barrier, nor do I have to come here. Additionally, we are again taking Subterfuge Mask down here. One thing you'll note is that some of these are weapon set 1 only. We talked about it in the offense section. Just kind of, allocate some to weapon set 1 as needed, so that for weapon set 2 you have more points for damage. Just because you only go to weapon set 2 when you're bossing after the boss is frozen, so you can get away with a little bit less energy shield. So with that out of the way, the other thing I want to quickly talk about is recovery. Because we're Acolyte of Chayula and we are building into Chaos, this Ascendancy Saps of Nightmare is really good. Generally, Leech that you get from gear only applies to the physical damage portion that you deal. But this node essentially allows you to lean into chaos damage as well. And if you go into, any of the, skills that we have, like, snipe, you see most of it, out of the total damage, most of it is coming from chaos. Or eye strike, right? Out of total damage, most is coming from chaos. And that's also the same for Void Illusion. Most of the damage is coming from chaos. So what that means is that we're leeching a huge amount of damage every time we hit. So when we, so make sure that when you're getting a ring, you're getting a ring with 2 suffixes that has both leech as mana as well as leech as life. You can also try to get it on the weapon, but then that kind of, makes the weapon a little bit too expensive, especially if you're also looking for something with good DPS. So I recommend that you start with the ring first and see if you need any more on the weapon side of things. So just these 2 things is actually, pretty good to give you enough sustain as you're mapping. Additionally, you also have a oh shit button in the form of Void Illusion. In case you're not familiar, Void Illusion lets you, every time you roll, you make this illusion right here, after image, and if the enemy damages the after image, it explodes and deals a ton of damage. What I have slotted here is Mana Leech as well as Life Leech 3. So this gives you 16% more leech on top of whatever you get from the ring, as well as 8% more mana on top of what you get from the ring. These 2 together fill up your mana as well as your energy shield immediately. This says Leech on Life. We're getting Leech on Energy Shield because of this unique glove right here, which says Life Leech is converted to Energy Shield Leech. So this is also an important and essential tech for recovery, part of the build. So yeah, this is really good, essentially. So especially in Delirium, or if you are surrounded by, mobs or whatever abyss, just kind of watch for some of the big, huge telegraph, like Ice Beam from Abyss monsters, or, like Delirium Giants like running towards you. They like hop over. As soon as they do that, you can almost treat it like a parry, just do like a last minute dodge out so that you can guarantee that this explodes, and everything recovers. Yeah, and so that's the defense part of it, and all of this is kind of really enough to take you into the end game and make you super tanky. So that about addresses some of the key aspects of the build. And before we wrap, I did also want to just talk about a few miscellaneous items. First thing first, if you want to play this build, outside of gearing for this and building for this and all of that, you really want to practice your gameplay. Specifically, you want to make sure that you get your perfect timing down for both Gathering Storm as well as Snipe. For me, it took me honestly about like a few hours to play, or at least maybe a day of play, depending on your gaming session, to really get comfortable with it. Run through like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 maps or something like that. The first few maps doesn't have to be crazy, just again get the timing comfortably right. You can see in my T15 T2 Wave 15 T2 Delirium mapping, I like back myself into a corner because I know that I can pull off my Gathering Storm well, and then I did my Gathering Storm and like nearly one shot at one of the Delirium boss. So if you can imagine in that scenario, if I don't get my Gathering Storm to be the perfect one, I don't face through the enemy, I get trapped, and then it's instant game over for me. So you really got to make sure, so the margin of error for you to perform these perfect timing and mapping scenarios is really low. So you really want to make sure you can get it down, like perfect timing, right? Just right. Or like you can just do this in the hide out also, right? Just kind of do this. See that one messed up. That one also, right? So just make sure. And the same thing with snipe. Second thing is, in the course of me making this video, I realized something kind of dumb. We talked about how, you know, we're trying to boost up the snipe damage by Mantra of Destruction and Barrage, and I talked about how Barrage by default gives you +2 times, and I mentioned that Frenzy Charge, maybe you can build into Resonance and a Power Charge or something like that. A much easier way to do this is to replace Wind Dancer and get Combat Fury. Combat Frenzy, sorry. This thing will just give you at least 1 to 2 Frenzy Charge depending on your support gem every time you freeze. No more than 6.7 seconds. I think that's fine when you're bossing. You're not freezing that much anyways. This I think guarantees at least 1 to 2, which significantly increases your output. I ran a map in between editing, and I think I was getting around 8 million. So, you know, I might, just because of that, make another version of this video later. You know, because I just realized I run Combat Frenzy essentially for better single target DPS. The last thing I want to talk about is, you know, at the very beginning when I jumped into this AOC build, I really wanted to build around Unraveling and Volatility, right? And what I realized is, you know, as I got into T15 and all of that, this Unraveling node is way too inconsistent. Unraveling, in case you didn't know, is really just all 3 Breach Lord gems on any one point in time. So, you know, your chaos damage can randomly contribute to freeze, flammability, ignite, or shock, but it changes every 2 seconds, and the change is also not in sequence. So it's not like fire, ice, lightning, fire, ice, lightning, fire, ice, lightning. If you're unlucky or lucky, you get like 3 fires in a row and you don't get shock, or, you know, vice versa and whatnot. This randomness essentially makes it that you cannot build into it. That's it. And also the fact that it's only 2 seconds. And I guess also the fact that, you know, whichever element you have, there's no visual cue. There's like a little thing on top with like slightly different artwork. Okay, so having like a lineage support gem is just so much better, to be frank. It's more consistent, and it's just much better to build things around, right? Because you have to make sure you stack all 3 elemental ailments on the boss, and Unraveling doesn't let you do that. Second thing is Volatility. Volatility is actually a pretty strong buff, but again, the issue is, you know, what is Volatility, by the way? You gain Volatility in different ways. You can kill enemies to gain them. You can put ailments on enemies to gain Volatility. So it stacks up infinitely, unless you get one of the notable that caps it. It explodes after 4 seconds, dealing damage to you, which this node removes the damage, so you don't have to worry about that. And afterwards, for every stack you have, you gain 1% of damage as chaos, which is really nice. In mapping scenario, you can stack up to 50 or even 100 pretty easily, because you're just freezing everyone, or shocking, or burning everyone all the time. The issue is you have to wait for it to explode before you get the buff, and the buff only lasts for, what is it, 10 seconds. So in bossing scenario, you're really in an awkward situation, because, you know, when you're like hitting the boss and stuff like that, you're still shocking them, or, you know, you're still kind of like burning them or whatever. So you're still building up Volatility. You really have to like don't damage him for 4 seconds for it to explode, and then you have 10 seconds to do all your single target debuff and all of that. It's really like jank. There is a support node that kind of helps with this called Catharsis, but then the issue becomes, here, let me, if I can find it for you guys. I think it's Catharsis. There we go. This one. But which, you know, just means that every time when you use the supported skill, you can explode Volatility on command. But then the issue is that you need 20 Volatility to explode, which is actually a little bit harder to get than you realize. And also the amount that you explode is random. So if you have 50 or 70 and you want to spend all of that on boss damage, you use a skill with this slotted in and you explode like for 2 stacks. So it's just randomness upon randomness upon randomness. So it's really just kind of in a bad place right now. I think they're leaning too much into flavor for chaos damage. I understand what they're trying to do, but you know, the variation of chaos damage is right now even worse than lightning. And it's kind of bullshit, you know, to be frank. So again, like, you know, I think Jonathan Rogers mentioned something about chaos rework. Yeah, they need to do that, because, you know, again, like, I started this build wanting to build everything around Unraveling, and I ended up with a build that's much better without Unraveling, but still building into the chaos into ailment archetype, right? So that should just not be, right, from a game designing perspective. So anyway, just a little bit of a rant. So, you know, for those of you who watched all the way to the end, if you notice on my thumbnail, it's Acolyte of Chayula asking himself, am I good yet? The answer is probably still no, like, to be frank, right? It's still kind of like a pretty underpowered Ascendancy. Doesn't mean we can't get to the end game, right? We did, and you know, we're still pretty good. And I think after some of the improvements I just mentioned, I might try Over Arbiter, but again, you know, a lot more work to be done. And all right, I think that's everything I have for this video. I really hope you enjoy this one. As usual, you know, take whatever you can get out of it. You don't have to copy this build, but maybe, you know, take some components of it or learning out of it. And again, that's why I kind of divvied up the video the way that I did it. And yeah, I'll probably have another look at this build just because I totally forgot that Combat Frenzy exists, and I now have all 3 different Breach Lore support gems. So until next time, cheers.